Billy Napier is on the hot seat in 2024. Now tell us Florida fans something we don't know already. Napier is 11 and 14 overall in Gainesville, 2 and 7 on the road, 6 and 10 in conference play, and winless versus Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, and Florida State. He also has yet to win a bowl game. So it's pretty obvious that the up and coming season for Billy Napier is a make or break, not just for Billy Napier, but also for athletic director Scott Strickland. The 2024 season is anything but a road of leeway for the Gators. They face 11 Power 5 opponents starting with their first four games against Miami, Sanford, Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Sanford is the one lone non-Power 5 football opponent that Florida faces this year before they get their first bye week virtue of their opener against Miami being a week 0 game. So coming off their bye week, their first one, they will have three games against UCF, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Then they get a second bye week, and then that's when things just get even more hectic schedule wise. Now, their first of five games coming off that second bye week is against Georgia, which is the annual world's largest outdoor cocktail party game, and then they go on the road to Texas, and I think that's their toughest game of the whole year because it's actually on the road rather than it being a neutral site. And then they come back for the final two games against LSU, Ole Miss, and Florida. LSU, and then Ole Miss, and then their final game of the season is against their annual in-state ACC rival, Florida State Seminoles. So I'm gonna cut right to the chase. Billy Napier needs to win 7 or 8 games in order to make it to 2025. Now, this is not a game-by-game prediction. What I am going to be doing is giving you guys my analysis of which group of games are probably the biggest ones that he needs to win, and the ones that are most unlikely to happen, and what's most likely to happen. So I've broken the season down into three categories: need to win, must not lose. Yes, there is a difference, and unlikely miracles. Now, when I say games you need to win, it's like games that you can't afford to lose because there's so much riding on the stake of these games, and that's in this first collage right here. So I mentioned before, his first game is against Miami. The Gators' first game of the year is against Miami, and then coming off their first bye week, they face UCF, and then they face Florida State at the end of the year. The reason why I have those three games on in this category is because if you live in the state of Florida and you're a college football fan, and especially if you're a fan of Florida, Miami, or Florida State, you understand how important it is to be viewed as the best team in the Sunshine State because obviously the state of Florida is a is basically a, a jewelry display case of high school talent. It's rich with talent, among other states like Texas and California, Louisiana, and Georgia. But the state of Florida is above and beyond any other high school recruiting site, any other state in America in terms of high school recruiting. At least in my humble opinion, being a native Floridian myself, so it's always been important for one of the big three to be at the top of the helm. Yes, UCF. I'm not including you into that mix, but even UCF fans know how important it is to be viewed as the top team in the state because their fans have been clamoring about that for the last few years. So it's important for Miami, UCF, and Florida State or Florida to one of these four teams to be at the top of the helm. And for Billy Napier, if you could go 2-1, or better yet, even somehow find a way to go 3-0, not saying it will or it won't happen, but if you could find a way to win at least two of these games against Miami, UCF, and Florida State, it would do you such good in the eyes of the fan base and the institution. The fact that you were able to get a couple wins against your three Power Five competitors inside the state. So it would be so nice for him to do that. And me, I don't know how other Gator fans feel about it. I don't necessarily want to lose to UCF, but if losing to UCF meant Florida could beat Miami and Florida State, I would be willing to accept that because I think it would be awesome to stand tall above Miami and Florida State. Florida doesn't play these two teams as much as they used to. in the same year. They still play Florida State every other year outside of COVID, but the Miami has been a lost rivalry inside the Sunshine State, and to win the renewal of that rivalry and get Florida State back after losing to them the last couple of years would do wonders for Billy Napier. Now, another trio of games that I have in this category of need to win are Tennessee, Kentucky, and LSU. A win in Knoxville would be Billy Napier's biggest road win of his entire career at Florida. I don't even think it's close. He has 2 victories on the road, and they were both against 2 bad teams in South Carolina this past year and Texas A&M the year before that. And in the Texas A&M one, they had like 20 something football players out of that game due to an illness that was rampant throughout that team. So that win victory in itself was kind of watered down, especially when you throw in the fact that Appalachian State went on the road and beat Texas A&M that year, on the road as well. So I mean, you did something that a Group of 5 team did, so it kind of took away that the achievement of getting Billy Napier's first road victory as the Gators head coach. And speaking of Texas A&M, they are an opponent for Florida this year as well. So a victory in Knoxville would be by far um, Billy Napier's best road victory. The next team right there is, well, Kentucky, because Billy Napier is 0-2 against Kentucky. He has yet to beat Kentucky. He's never beaten Kentucky. The last 2 years, he's had more talented team, but he's kind of been outcoached but he's really been outcoached by Mark Stoops over the last two matchups, and that's inexcusable. Even though we make fun of Dan Mullen, us Gator fans, for losing to Kentucky and being the first head coach to do so in 3 decades, he does have 2 victories against Kentucky. He never went 0-2 against them. Billy Napier has done that. And Billy Napier needs to beat Kentucky just from simply a standpoint of saying, you know what, I may have not done well as Florida's coach, but at least I can say I didn't go winless against Kentucky. There should be no reason why Florida fans have to be begging for a victory against the Wildcats. It just, in football, it's just not. It's one thing to beat the Wildcats in basketball, but in football, if you're a Florida fan, it should be almost a given because it used to be a given. And, it's just sadly not that case anymore. And another thing with Tennessee and Kentucky is that both of those programs are better than Florida. Let's just say it. Let's just face it. Forget about the specific teams. The football program has been better than the Gators football program, and I never thought I'd ever get to that point as a fan. When I was growing up as a kid, I used to look at Florida's schedule and used to be automatic W's against Tennessee and Kentucky every single year, and it's not that case anymore. I mean, yeah, Florida still finds ways to beat Tennessee, and Tennessee's only beaten Florida twice over the last 18 years. But if you look at the programs, Florida over the last 3 seasons, 6-7, 6-7, and then 5-7, they're 16-21 over the last 16-21 over the last 37 football games. The Tennessee Vols 27-12 over the last 3 years, and Kentucky 24-15 over the last 3 years. We should not be looking up at Tennessee. Maybe it's one thing to maybe look up at Tennessee, but to look up at Kentucky as well, it should never sit well with us as Gator fans. And we need to beat those teams to show that, hey, we can come back and we can get back at the heat, but it's got to start with beating Kentucky and Tennessee because they've just been better. They've risen above us, and there's no excuse for that. And another victory in this game would be LSU. Billy Napier is winless against LSU like he is against Kentucky and Georgia and Florida State. And LSU, they're going to be an interesting team this year because they no longer have their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Jaden Daniels. They don't have a Malik Neighbors. They don't have the offense coordinator who developed the scheme underneath these guys. Their offensive coordinator went to go coach at Notre Dame, and Jaden Daniels is heading to the NFL along with Neighbors. But they did get a nice defensive coordinator hire in Blake Baker from Missouri, who did a real good job of rebranding that defensive side of the ball for the Missouri Tigers, and it was a pretty respectable defensive coordinator during his time at Miami. So it'll be interesting to see how LSU will be this year. And I've already talked about the other 3 opponents, Florida State and Miami and UCF. Now this group right here, these two games is considered um, these two games right here are what I consider the must not lose. Now, if you're wondering what's the difference between games that you must not lose and then games that you need to win, is that with must not lose, you're expected to win, and anything less would be a major disappointment. And these are probably the games that you can argue for Florida to win rather comfortably are Samford and Mississippi State, purely based on the talent advantage. Now, Florida gets Samford at home, but even on the road, they should be able to beat them. Same thing with Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State, I thought, made a very good hire in Jeff Libby, the former offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. But but it's year one for him, and he's being a head coach for the very first time at an SEC school. It wasn't like Billy Napier, where he at the very least went to Louisiana, then was a head coach for 4 years before joining Florida. Jeff Libby is quite frankly going to be learning on the job in year one. That's just an absolute fact. Now, with Mississippi State, I'm looking up to see if Will Rogers had completed his transferring um, away from Mississippi State, because he originally transferred out, and I heard that he had landed on the spot, but maybe he was thinking about going elsewhere. Okay, so he did transfer. It was at Washington. When their head coach, Kalen DeBoer, went to go take the Alabama job, he entered the portal again after he transferred there from Mississippi State, but I guess he decided to remain there and finish his final year of eligibility in college football up there in for the Washington Huskies. So there is going to be no Will Rogers at Mississippi State as well. So it's completely new beginnings for both Jeff Libby and the program. And Billy Napier should quite frankly win this game because he's had 3 years of experience, 3 years of transfer portal classes classes and two full recruiting classes, and he was able to steal a couple of recruits that he had lost originally in the 2023 early signing day cycle, bringing Jameer Grimsley and DeAndre Robinson. So he should be able to just win this game based off of talent alone. You shouldn't solely rely on that, but that should be the biggest indicator why Florida should win these two games. I would be disappointed if they lost either one of them. Now we go to these four games right here. Now remember, this isn't a week by week chronological basis. This is the games that I think are the easiest, the most polarizing, and the toughest of the season. So right here, this is what I call the unlikely miracles, meaning I think Florida would need an unlikely miracle to win any of these four games. Texas is bringing back Quinn Ewers. They are a championship contender, especially now with the college football playoffs being extended to 12 teams. And then with Ole Miss, they're bringing back Jackson Dart, one of the best, arguably the best SEC quarterback in the conference today. And Lane Kiffin, who's one of the brilliant offensive minds in the nation. And of course, the Georgia Bulldogs, who are the best program in the conference. And then you have Texas A&M, who have a year one head coach, but a pretty good coach in Mike Elko, considering what he did at Duke. So you can imagine what he could do with the talent level that's at Texas A&M and the recruiting budget that he'll have and the resources that he needs to bring College Station an actual winner, which is something that they have not had in quite a long time, and that is a consistent winner. With Texas A&M, they're the biggest wild card of the conference, and their talent index was never an issue. It was just that Jimbo Fisher could not put the pieces together, could not fit the pieces of the puzzle together in order to achieve at a level that he wanted to achieve at Texas A&M. And if there is a silver lining, is that half of these games that Florida will get are at home. Texas A&M and Ole Miss, Florida will get them at home. So it should be good to see how they can use that home field advantage to their that home field to their advantage. Hopefully, if they can at least be relatively decent, they can get that famous Gator crowd noise on their side and to make things more difficult for the opposing team. So that's the video right there. Those are just what I think are the easiest, toughest, and the most critical games for Billy Napier to win in 2024.